Hi, folks. We're Tassless today. Tassless today, your pushback channel. Thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the surprising, or perhaps unsurprising, depending on your point of view, consistency of crime statistics and the rate of crime committed by mass immigration people and the local citizenry. So I guess there's a few things to notice here. I noticed looking at the crime rates in Germany, where cities where mass migrants are clustering, and the rate of in this particular city, the rate of crimes relative to the local population was 4.7 times. So a mass migrant will commit crimes at 4.7 times the rate of a local citizen. Now, I guess there's a few things to consider here. Wherever you see mass migration across the Western world, remember it's been forced by the globalists. Third world, lawless peasants are being brought into the first world against the will, indeed in defiance of the local population's wishes, and they're being brought in mass numbers, whether it's illegal or legal, or both, and they're committing crimes at an unusual rate. So now, whether you go to Britain, or whether you go to Australia, or whether you go to the United States, whether you go to Germany or France, or in fact, wherever you go, Holland, wherever mass migration occurs, you have approximately the same numbers. So I'm now rather dubious about the accuracy of the between 4 and 5 times. It's 4.3, 4.5, 4.7, 4.8 in every Western country. The crimes that mass migrants are allegedly committing within that narrow band of that narrow multiple for between 4, 4.2 and 4.8, sort of that range, if you like. They'll commit crimes at that rate more than the local population. Now, the crimes suggest that the crimes are fairly serious ones. So we're talking, assault, serious assault, robbery, as in trashing a shop and or beating someone to death and taking their wallet, or these sorts of things, and pack rape and so on. So, but it seems there are a lot of lower level crimes that are not being prosecuted. So I don't know how accurate those numbers are, whether it's like social security fraud, things like that. And I don't know if those are being prosecuted. They also, in some places, they're only including prison sentences for the mass migrants that are 12 months or greater. So if they get a 3-month or a 6-month prison sentence, or they're let out on early release and they don't serve the full 12 months or greater, then that's not recorded. So I'm thinking the numbers are actually much higher, and either the state is choosing not to prosecute, or to give them something like weekend detention and community service, or nighttime detention, things like that. So I'm thinking, or just good behaviour bonds. I've noticed in some cases, there's someone who's been arrested 3 times for driving unlicensed, unregistered. And in 2 of those times, they've been under the influence of alcohol. But each time they've got a good behaviour bond, so they go right back out and start committing the same crime. Now, the same can be said for people like placard waving climate change activists who will bring a whole city to a standstill with their antics, but they'll get off with a $50 fine, things like that. So there seems to be a real desire by the Western, in the politicized justice system that we now have, or super politicized, to try and avoid prosecuting illegals or third world brown people, black people, to avoid prosecuting them, to give them much lighter sentences and avoid. Now, already the prisons in places like the United States and Britain, Australia, have an unusually large number of brown and black people, and so the authorities don't like that. It makes mass migration look bad. And so they want to try and sort of lower the temperature on that. And instead of saying, gee whiz, mass migration isn't working out, instead of going down that path, let's say, well, hey, look, we just won't prosecute them. we'll just give them a good behaviour bond and let them out, and that way we can keep the statistics down. So, and because there's such a consistency of numbers across the entire Western world, I'm thinking those statistics are artificial. They're probably double the reality. I'd say it could be 10 times the rate of in terms of crimes committed. Now, in addition to that, the first generation born to mass migrants, of which there are now quite a lot in the Western world. Remember, the mass migration thing kicked off in earnest nearly 30 years ago, a little bit longer in the United States. So the first generation born to the mass migrants around, they also commit crimes at an unusually high rate. So much higher than local citizens who've got ancestry or who are white people who've got ancestry in the West. So the crimes committed by the first generation born of the brown and black mass migrants, they are also higher. But those statistics are included in the local citizens, which jump that up. So I think the rate of crimes relative to long generation type white residents of the West, I think it's probably 10 to even 12 times the rate of crimes. Now, why is that exactly? Is it the wrong sort of mass migrants are being brought in, from the so-called refugee camps in Africa, where those refugee camps are run by brutal mafia type squads? Is it that? Ostensibly the United Nations runs the camp, but the reality is it's the local goon squads, and then those people make sure they get to the front of the line for migrating to a nice rich first world country with lots of freebies that they can parasite off. So I think they're picking the wrong people. Ostensibly it's humanitarian. I look at those poor people from the war-torn area. It doesn't matter how humanitarian you want to be. If they can't and won't and refuse to integrate and they act like mafia street goons, then why would you want them? Why would anybody want them? Now, the second tier is, what is the induction process? Should there be special refugee camps in the West that put these people through an induction process, as long as it takes? You're going to have an exam that you can speak, read and write competent English. And until you pass that exam, you ain't going anywhere. You're staying here, but you have the option of going back to where you came from. We'll even give you a bus ticket or a plane ticket back to where you came from. But if you're going to stay, then you're going to be an Australian citizen, and you're going to speak English, and you're going to understand the law. You're going to understand culture and understand behavioural norms and so on. We don't want you going out there and committing shitloads of crime. So there's elements here of should a rigorous induction process be enforced. You don't pass that English exam, as in written and spoken English, you're not going anywhere. And if you flunk it 3 times in a row, you're going back to where you came from. You're just not trying. You don't want to be. You don't want to be Australian, and so on. So, or American, or British, or French, German, whatever. So it's the selection of people, number one, and number two, completely failed induction and acclimatization procedures. They're just not doing it. And even children from migrants who've been through the entire Western education system from birth right through to finishing high school or going to college, even they commit crimes at a much higher rate, and they've been, theoretically at least, fully westernized, but even they again commit crimes at a much higher rate. Now, if you look at, say, the black diaspora in the black controlled or majority cities in the United States, they commit crimes by about the same rate. This is relative to the local white population. They commit crimes by about the same rate as the mass migrants do, or so it's alleged. Again, I think it's much higher. And again, when you look at the amount of black people that commit crimes, again, multiple repeated crimes, and they're still on good behaviour bond. There's again people who've committed 5 what I would consider to be serious offences. 5 drunken driving without a licence, for example, 5 times, and still they only get good behaviour bonds. So I think the crime rate in those areas again is much higher than we're really told. They're happy to gin up any instance of a white person committing a crime, but all the other brown or black people commit crime, then it's played down, if indeed it's mentioned at all. So we really need to look at the statistics on this, just how accurate are they, and if people are inclined to commit crimes at an unusually high rate, then why wouldn't they be deported, or why wouldn't rigorous induction processes be introduced? Why wouldn't there be a closer examination of, well, okay, we want to be humanitarian, sure, but you're going to have to integrate in our society. We don't want you coming over and say, well, it's humanitarian to let you come in and you're allowed to murder 3 people, but after that we're going to get tough on you. No. You have to integrate and want to integrate. The idea that you're entitled to come to a rich first world country and then parasite endlessly off the white taxpayer. No. And these are, I think, issues that really do have to be addressed. But when we look at the statistics, again, this it's between 4 and 5 times the crime rate of the local born population. I think it's at least double that, if not more. You've been fantastic today. Your pushback, Joan. Thank you for listening.